Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome TV anchor France 24, Stephanie Antoine, along with President R20 Regions of Climate Action, Michèle SABBAN, and Secretary General of the Presidency of the Gabonese Republic, Etienne MASSARD.
Bonjour à tous. Merci d'être avec nous.
Hello everyone, thanks for being with us today. We are going to be talking today with Etienne MASSARD, who is the General Secretary for the Gabonese Presidency, and Michèle SABBAN, who is a French political figure, a regional councillor, and who's going to be explaining to what extent the regions have a fundamental role to play in the fight against climate change. Etienne MASSARD, I know that you are very involved with environmental issues. You advise the President and have done so for a considerable time on these issues. Where do you stand on the Green Gabon project? Thank you. I wanted to underline, first of all, that climate does not only concern Gabon Vert, Green Gabon. It concerns all of the development of our country. Green Gabon is independent from the development policy, but there's also industry for Gabon and services for Gabon. And the President of the Republic has asked us to see in what way we can make these more compatible. The development plan that had been proposed to the Gabonese people with respect to climate issues. And in this way, he set up as early as 2010 the National Climate Council, which he asked me to take the head of. And the Climate Council grouped together a set of players, administrations, both public and private, and partners, both social partners from the civil society, and we thought together about what were the points we needed to act upon precisely so as to include climate change in these programs. So what is this about? Does Gabon really have a role to play? Does Africa have a role to play? Africa, I would say, very certainly has a role to play to the extent that today the climate questions are impacting us. I draw a parallel today in terms of climate change questions. You could ask the same question as you asked the question about the public debt. These are questions that require adjustments, both structural adjustments and adjustments in terms of the actual way we operate in a country, the way we design projects. And in the future, no one in the world could possibly not include climate issues in what they do, whether it be the sea levels, the forests, energy, new technologies, and so forth, which enable us today to be able to continue to develop in countries and to continue to act in such a way as well-being can be at the very center of the concerns of the political population. And I think that Gabon is succeeding in that without difficulty. They certainly have a role to play. Michèle SABBAN, you are at the head of R20, which was founded with Arnold Schwarzenegger, the American actor, who you met. Could you tell us how you set up the R20 and to what extent is the region key in implementing projects having to do with the environment and sustainable development projects? Thank you. And thank you for asking me to speak in front of so many men and women today who are supporting us in this action throughout the world. After Copenhagen, the Copenhagen agreements, which were, after all, a failure, that's how the governments basically revealed it, I went to see the governor of California, who himself had given a speech saying that we had to place the regions at the very heart of our approach to fight against climate change. And starting in 2008, and it's true that it was really kind of a game of poker. There was an NGO we created an NGO called R20 that grouped together the 20 richest areas in the world, and in fact now there are 700. It's no longer G20. We have a way of working which is quite atypical. Regions and decision makers. We have partner companies that are also partners that help us in projects, and experts as well. So these three contributing parties help us lead together actions throughout the world. We have a very big example, a significant example that we're working on now. And I would say that Africa is the key to development, especially in terms of climate. And why is it the key? Well, today there is a process that has started which is irreversible by cities and regions who want that action to be at the very heart of our proposals. Many men and women do believe and speak about this, and they discuss this. But at what point in time will projects actually become visible for us as citizens? Now, this is what the R20 is here for. You have a certain number of concrete projects, right? You set up a Rio de Janeiro electrification project. It was solar lighting, yes, indeed, public lighting in the city of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. There's also a question of security in the city because obviously lighting has to do with safety at night. The saving energy, decreasing the cost, and it also has to do with the safety of the people in the city. There's also a question of managing waste in Oran and Algeria. This works very well. And we've also created a company to process waste. We train the population in selective sorting of waste, and we have more than 20,000 people in Oran that were trained in this, and we are training young people that just got out of school who have participated very attentively in debates about this. So this is also a key. We train 100 people, 100 young people coming out of the school system, boys and girls, to be able to work in the plant as soon as it's opened. And I think these kinds of actions, as you know, Pierre Rabhi, who is a humanist, well-known and recognized, said that the best method is a method that involves young people. You have to, little by little, bring a new stone to participate in the construction. So you're talking both about regions, but also public and private funding, partnerships between public and private partnerships. So what is the showcase project? Michèle SABBAN said you could be involved in Gabon in solar projects. You're developing wood as well in Gabon. I just wanted to respond globally. I'm going to give you an example, an atypical example. We're obviously an oil-producing country. Everyone knows that oil production in Gabon is a production that is also produces gas at the same time. And gas used to be burned off, used to be flared. Now, with respect to climate issues that are being raised, in the objective in reducing our greenhouse gas production, we had to reduce flaring. So what is happening today about that in Gabon today? Companies that were hesitant initially to get into a process that would reduce flaring of gas, today the gas that was being burned off previously are actually used to produce a good part of the electricity in the city of Libreville. What does this mean? The question of climate change imposes upon us a certain, we have to review our production methods. We have to revisit the models that we've been using until now. And you're doing that now. We're doing it, I would say, naturally, as many have done before us at different points in time. The time for climate change is a new era that has its own ideology with a whole series of technologies that will be coming on the scene. And the error is to consider that question as a kind of specific, in a given specific domain. When the President of the Republic takes the decision to prohibit exportation of citrus fruits, he did it first of all to limit cutting of wood in the forest, but basically you're restructuring the economy around wood. And today we have companies that until now were just doing first-level transformation, and now they're moving to third-level transformation, and the question of waste arises. And wastage of wood in Gabon today, they were just thrown out into the woods, producing greenhouse gas. And now people are thinking about and who are reusing the waste wood. So the problem is investment it does require resources. Yes, indeed, it does require investment, such as the development, but also further investment in other areas. But I think we need to consider that the question of the climate, as is the case for other questions that are asked of humanity, are also opportunities to adjust, to redirect development without having to deny the comfort that all human beings seek out. Gabon, I can rest assured that Gabon today is on the right path. The diversification of the economy that we are working on today includes these questions, and I think the economy in Gabon is on the right path, as I say, so that in the future we can face up to and be present amongst the countries that will be in phase with the major issues in these questions. Michèle SABBAN, you talk about the environment and sustainable development. You can also talk about cost in the investments. You started this very concrete project with a partnership for public-private funding. Is not the hardest part to find the funding for this type of project? There are two questions: the question of funding by, through PPPs, but there's also innovative funding. And we did set up funding that consisted in not touching municipal budgets so that we could do some concrete projects. But on energy savings, due to these projects, we could actually start, these were being paid, the payoff time was 4 years. So that helped in realizing the projects as well. So Laurent Fabius, who's the head of COP21, announced this several times. This is actually the solution. It's also a motivating factor, but it's also the solution to find agreements on an international platform. I believe you have to get back to our declarations in certain regions throughout the world. PPPs do work, and they are actually leading to fully realized projects, and that's what we're proposing, and that's what we're setting up. So I think that this is one of the solutions. We're talking about the agenda of possible solutions in terms of the COP21 in Paris that will enable us. The COP21 in Morocco will help them in producing solutions locally there as well. But everyone talks about funding, and I'd love to talk about that for a moment. We've decided to set up a green fund for women. You're involving women more in this process? Yes. This is fully 53% of the population of the planet are women. And I know to what extent the actions are being proposed in the framework of green jobs. And this is where I'm along the same lines as the gentleman next to me. Sustainable development is not only sustainable development. It also is economy, ecology, and ethics, the 3 E's, as it were. And what we want to do in this fund is to enable women who would like to start a project and having to do with green jobs, and whether it be with respect to education and training, and we would like to set up this fund by continent. It's already present in North America. Women that are heads of companies. We talk about inequality, and I'd like to respond solidarity. Women should enable women who don't have the means to start their own activity to do so. We are currently setting up activities in China and with Morocco. I'm working with Côte d'Ivoire, and I hope with Gabon in the future to set up this kind of process here, which would make it possible for women to start their own projects in the framework of this environment. So that's basically what we do. Why women in particular? That's a good question. Women today, they get out of school, and we realize, and it was said earlier, they are actually the most subjected to unemployment because of inequality in employment, and being hired is difficult. And that's why it's important for them to be able to start their activity, their own activity, but it's often the kickoff that's the hardest part. You need a little bit of help to get going and to start their own business. So we trust people, we believe in trust, and we're betting on that. If women of the world need to be able to help this process along. And I hope that next year, at the next summit here, that I'll be able to report back on the Green Fund, which I hope will have made it possible for many women here and elsewhere to benefit from it. What do you think, sir, about this initiative?
Let me answer on the issue of funding. We are dealing here with a hindrance to the funding of the combat against climate change. And as regards issues that are specific to climate change, and particularly as far as the technologies are concerned, they can be extremely useful. And this is what we need to discuss. Technology transfers from countries owning these technologies to those that don't is the same issue as medication. Today, most medication is not produced in the poorest countries. So today, how can we focus these technologies, as India, for example, does, to focus on these issues so that they can help us resolve the situations? And so these are exactly the same issues as the ones that you've described. So if we want to succeed today in implementing successful combat against climate change, we need to have within each country the list of the requirements for each country's development. Today, if we ask each country to tell us how much they need to be able to combat, for example, climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, then, of course, this would be very helpful. In Gabon, we've been preparing for this now for a long time, and we are in a position to be able to do it. I think that poor development is as costly, if not more costly, than good development. And as regards women, we need to avoid generalization. Well, women are key. Of course, women are key, if only because they give birth. But if I take a country such as Gabon, the issue of women in Gabon may exist maybe at a single level, which is at political level, at the decision makers level. But today, the girls in Gabon are much more numerous than boys in school. And I would like to say that the results in terms of examinations are much, much better than those of the boys. So we need to be extremely careful when we talk about these aspects. We need to avoid generalization because then we risk to create imbalance amongst these issues. To talk about Gabon, there are countries where the condition of women is not the same, but I can tell you that Gabonese women are in wonderful positions. They're formidable women, and this is not a contradiction to what I said. On the contrary, I am betting on Gabonese women, as you should bet on Gabonese boys. No. And we need to give both girls and boys the same opportunities to grow. There is no distinction here to be made. I didn't say there was a distinction between a gender-based distinction. I'm just saying that if we are to be solidary, we need to allow women and girls who want to establish their own enterprise. But this has to be done for boys. It already exists for boys, sir. No, ma'am, absolutely not. I think that in Gabon, you're talking about things that you know nothing about. Today in Gabon, boys and girls, at least up to a certain age, have the same potential, the same abilities, and we need to make political efforts, as our president has said. We need to make political efforts to include more women, and I personally sincerely wish to see the number of women decision makers at the political level of our country to grow in numbers. So we do not disagree, we are complementary here. Well, we have 1 minute left to answer the question, what do you both expect from COP21 in Paris? 30 seconds each. Personally, what I expect, and the president of the Republic of Gabon has also said this, is that Gabon can demonstrate the solution we would provide, the development model we have chosen, and the action plans that we will want to share with others to demonstrate that climate change is not a fatality. On the contrary, it is an opportunity to develop our countries better and differently. And so now we're talking about states since Copenhagen. What is new as regards COP21 is that the chairman has, of course, included in the agenda of the discussions the best practices that work well between cities and regions. And in Paris, there will certainly be a strong stand taken in favor of these cities and regions that we hope will help us move forward in the solutions that will be, we hope, the outcome of the COP21. And I have full faith that this will be the case. And certainly Africa has the energy and these solutions and may therefore change the deal on these particular issues, because we have to also take into account the behaviors of women and men on these different issues. Thank you both very much, and thank you all. Please stay in this room because our debates are not yet over. Thank you.